Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, the show where we bring you the practice, the pedagogy, and the politics surrounding public education. And gosh, there's never been so much politics around public education as there is today. But we have other things to talk about because it's important that we, as parents and as educators, have a chance to not only hear about the politics going on in public education, but also at the same time, how to raise healthier children, how to send healthier children to school, how to help kids that are coming in traumatized for whatever reason, whether it's COVID, just trauma at home, poverty, which is its own trauma layer. It's just important that we constantly get exposed to the latest science around why we should do the things that we do to help kids get healthier. And so today we'll talk about three different things. So I'll get started with the latest on the COVID masking issue. You know, just when you thought it was safe to put your mask away, especially your kids' masks, the CDC last week or 2 weeks ago had said that they would say that only kids who are not vaccinated should wear masks at school. And I would guess that would be the same with the adults. This week, the American Academy of Pediatrics has come out and said, no, you know what? Everybody needs to wear masks. All the adults, all the kids at school, vaccinated, not vaccinated. And the reason behind that is because not everybody will be vaccinated. It's the and this is a national organization of pediatricians, but it's their argument that the CDC guidelines don't go far enough. And at a time when the vaccine rates vary by community, we shouldn't try to apply one treatment or one Band-Aid, one guideline. So, especially in light of the significantly more contagious Delta strain of COVID, which is now 83% of the COVID that people are getting, is the Delta strain. And also vaccinated people are getting COVID now, where that wasn't as common before. And so because of those issues, the American Academy of Pediatrics is saying it's their suggestion that all kids K-12 wear masks and adults as well. So that leads us right into politics, folks. That for a minute that was science, but really that's politics. Because you have some states who will comply with that, but then you have some states who are not okay with asking kids to wear masks, or even adults now. And really, the states where the guidelines are followed will be the easiest for the schools, because the schools can just say, oh, I've got to do this. We don't have a choice. It's those states that don't want everyone wearing masks, that they don't agree with the guidelines. Those school districts in those states are going to have to make some decisions. They're going to have unhappy parents. And so that's going to be a tough beginning of the year conversation for districts in those states. Again, the politics behind public education at work. So that's a current event. The next thing I want to chat about, because I'm just always wanting to give information about how to help the adults speak to their own children in a way that can lead to openness between the child and the parent, so that when tough things come up, it becomes easier for the parent to have those conversations, and the child is less reluctant to enter into those conversations. And conversations could be, yes, divorce, death, sex and relationships, diversity, culture talks, consent. All of those are very important topics that parents must talk to their kids about, but really not waiting until middle school. If you haven't established a good open communication channel with your child by the time middle school happens, it's going to be awfully difficult to have conversations with your children when they're 12, 13, 14 about things like sex and boyfriends, girlfriends, birth control, all of those things. They will feel embarrassed. And so how do do it? First of all, why should we do it? Well, again, in the old days, back in our grandparents' time, to me, we absolutely did not talk to kids about difficult subjects. We just absolutely didn't talk about sex. Certainly not if race relations, unless it, there were some progressive parents, and grandparents, but really that was in the minority. We just left the uncomfortable stuff maybe for the schools to do. And as far as sex is concerned, if the schools were allowed to teach about sex, they would have to have parent permission, and not everybody gave permission. So let me give you an interesting story here. When I was in my first year of teaching fifth grade in 1989 for a large urban district in the Dallas area, I had to teach sex ed to fifth graders. And that was just normal back then. But I had to take a semester-long master's level class to be able to teach it, a graduate level class. So I went and took the course the fall semester. I took the teaching sex ed to young children. It's, like I said, 3-hour college course, got certified, and then was able to teach it in the spring. And this is fascinating how times are so different now. To fifth graders, we taught differently. We taught fifth grade girls separate from the boys most of the information. But when it came to actually teaching the sex act, we brought the kids together and they taught it in a co-ed manner. That is hard for me to envision in today's world. So, it's a very flux curriculum around the allowance of letting kids learn about sex in school early on. But really, data show that kids, research tells us that kids and teens who have regular conversations with their parents and caregivers about sex and relationships are less likely to take risks with their sexual health and more likely to be healthy and safe. So it's never too early and never too late to start talking to your kids about sex and relationships. I've read data that says the more, the earlier, the more comfortable parents talk to kids about sex, the lower the chance that kids will get pregnant before marriage. Matter of fact, there's a program called AIM, and it's about teaching abstinence, and we do it through the schools, and it's a neat program. And the program is twofold. The first night, the parents come and they see the whole PowerPoint. They can come and ask questions, look at the PowerPoint that the kids are going to get the next day, and it's taught to middle school kids. And it really teaches about the importance of abstinence and what happens. They do it through the lens of loss potential on the part of a child and student if and when he or she is pregnant. And I say he, getting a girl pregnant. And they tell stories, and these are true stories, about kids who had great potential to really go far in life, but they ended up having to drop out of school, get sort of a lower end job, and take care of the baby. And so, no, we're not going to save every kid with going through that program, but we're going to catch the attention of some. And so it's a really excellent program. They hit the kids and the parents with lots of very current data and about the importance of understanding what it means to enter into a sexual relationship. So, but the whole point of this segment is to understand that you shouldn't wait. So here are opportunities. I like these. How do I start conversations about sex and relationships with my kids? But you know what? This is not just about sex. This can be applied to culture, diversity, and then consent. And I'm going to do another whole segment on consent maybe next week because it's so important. And there's a new angle that we need to bring to people's attention. But talking with your kids about sex, relationships, culture, diversity is a lifelong conversation. Doing a little bit at a time instead of having the talk takes pressure off you, and it helps kids process your values and information over time. Having regular conversations also sends the message that these topics are important enough to keep bringing up and are a normal part of life. Everyday life provides lots of opportunities for talking about difficult subjects, and here's some common teachable moments to look out for. Like when you or another family member, a neighbor, announces that they're pregnant. Or if we have somebody of a different culture move in next door, and how that is to be celebrated, how that can be celebrated, and what that culture might represent that we have researched as a family. When puberty, dating, LGBT issues, love, or sex come up on a TV show, in a movie, or in a song on the radio, those are excellent opportunities to, again, bring up the subject and to make a comment and ask for what do they think. You can also do that around maybe cultural things that come up on TV. There's an interesting thing going on now that we have a lot of commercials that reflect biracial families. I've read articles, matter of fact, by Black authors who actually don't think kindly of that, but that's an interesting aside. But again, it's companies trying to market to a wider audience and to be more inclusive and diverse. When gender stereotypes are pushed in ads, games, TVs, and books. Now, I've done segments on this in the past about how to look out for gender stereotypes, but they're out there still, and that's a great opportunity. And it's not only gender types, but cultural stereotypes that are pushed. When you see unrealistic portrayals of or sexualized bodies of models, celebrities, I know that I don't really particularly care to see very young children in sort of sexualized outfits. I don't think it's appropriate. And so that might be a conversation I might have with my grandchildren. Ads for pads and tampons, birth control, or condoms. Again, great opportunity. News stories or ads that talk about sex, cultural diversity, and lack of consent. Those are all topics that are unfortunately constantly in the news. So when any of these things come up, you can jump in the conversation and say, well, what do you think about how pregnancy happens? Oh, how do you know? How do you know? How do you think she knew she was pregnant? What do you think about the fact that the celebrity is photoshopped on the cover to look different than they look in real life? How do you feel about this ad for dolls only having pink and girls in it? What would you do if someone you were dating started acting like that character on TV? In elementary and middle school, give them books about anatomy, puberty, diversity, and let them explore it on their own. Check in with them to ask what they've learned and what was confusing and answer any questions they may have, or lead them to answers. We always should try to help them get to the answer instead of giving them the answer, if at all possible. We adults, we want to be so caring and loving to our kids that I've had to stop my husband from answering questions that I'm giving to my grandkids that he wants to answer for them so that they don't have to do that. And it's like, I've had to train him to stop. So if you're one of those caring, loving adults that tries to answer questions for kids, you're not doing them a favor. Let them get to the answer by probing and asking probing questions. Check in with them regularly about what's going on with them and their peers at school. Ask them about how they feel about their friendships and help guide them through any troubles that they're currently experiencing. And again, be careful about that, because that's one of those, we might end up trying to guide them too much and then they shut down. So my hope is that in these few minutes in talking about this difficult subject, that you will get something out of it with the thought of, I haven't started doing that. Let me look for opportunities to bring up probing questions when it comes to the hot topics really that we have going on now, and cultural diversity, the sex relationships and so forth. So, and if you want to know more, if you need more information and help, I'm at your beck and call. Just email me. The email is on the Ask Dr. Be Good Facebook page, and I'm happy to give you words if you need them. Our next segment is having to do with summer and summer vacations. And many of you, I know we do, we travel with our kids and grandkids, and we'll stay a week in a house. So multi-generational travel and vacationing together is a thing, and it's pretty popular. Matter of fact, I have a niece that is on vacation with her dad and her own kids. And, I see Facebook and it's a lovely time. And she had mentioned that she and her dad are the first ones to get up in the mornings. They're up in Wyoming, beautiful country. And she and her dad popped over to a coffee shop and just, had some time alone together and special time. And having lost my dad recently, I told her, relish those moments, right? And of course, I was probably preaching to the choir. She told me, yes, she does. But we can't do that enough with our parents who are still with us, with those aging relatives. But so let's talk about how to stay sane in our multi-generational vacations. First of all, it's important that everybody has an understanding of who pays for what. In the article that I'll put the link in the comments, it talks about, in some families, the grandparents, who are the more established folks, they'll pay for the housing, and then the kids pay for the food and any other adventures. Some others just split it, and they split it as fairly as they can. There's one of the ways that we need to get our kids to feel more comfortable around traveling with parents is learning to share costs. And having been through that, our kids are now in their 30s, but there was an expectation there for a while that anytime we all went to dinner together, no matter how big the group, hubby and I were the ones who were to pay. And then as they got more successful and more established, they started picking up the tab every once in a while. And now it's just something that we take turns doing. And when we travel together, we do pay our, whether third or fourth, depending on how many family members go. But we're very much part of that support, pay support group. They're not paying for us. We don't have that expectation, but we're not picking up the whole bill either. So that's good. So the pay is one of them. And then chores. because the article was online and I read the comments afterwards, and there are a lot of bitter family members who have felt like family members did not pull their weight during vacations. They didn't help clean up. They didn't offer to wash, take their turns washing dishes. They didn't help babysit a lot of times. And so a lot of these things need to be talked about ahead of time to ensure a more pleasant and less dramatic time together. One of the families suggested having a list, and they said in their family, they go every year, every other year, and they put up a task list, a to-do list. And actually family members scramble to fill it out. They enjoy taking their turns, and they have which family is taking a turn cooking dinner, which family is taking a turn washing that night, which family turn it is to do other things like take out the garbage, set the table, and so forth. So it's nice getting to the point where you have family members trained to eagerly await being able to fill out their name next to the needed chore for each day. And it could be that you don't have anything structured for breakfast and lunch, and the only thing structured as far as meals are concerned is the nighttime meal. And a lot of that has to do with different people getting up at different hours, different people having different ideas about breakfast. I do intermittent fasting. I don't eat breakfast. I have my first meal between 12 and 2, depending on my schedule. And so I don't want to be stuck on a making breakfast schedule if I don't eat breakfast. And so I'd much rather be out there walking the woods or walking in the sand or wherever it is that we are. And babysitting, goodness gracious. So there was a lot of resentment with families who hadn't taken the time to work this out before the trip as far as babysitting. So a family has 3 kids, a family has 2 kids, another family has a newborn baby, and yet everybody wants to be able to take advantage of some rest time and some fun time and maybe even some alone time. So that would have to be worked out. It might be that you have, depending on how many kids, let's say you have 2 adults taking turns each day or each portion of the day, maybe morning duty, watching the crew go swimming, and then another couple of people watch kids doing arts and crafts in the afternoon and organize that. But being able to have that worked out ahead of time sure takes the family drama and so forth out of a multi-generational family vacation. And let's talk about the reasons why we might want to have multi-generational vacations together, because many of you are going, ooh, shudder, shudder. Maybe you've never done that. We've had many, and we've enjoyed every single one. And that is because not only is it a together time, but it's a time to be able to connect with the grandkids at a deeper level, play games with them, be able to have the kids with the grandkids listening, have us ask the older folks in the room what life was like back in the day. Because really, if you think about it, especially people, the baby boomers like me, a lot has changed from the time I was born to now. And of course, even more so with my father's generation, because they would have just barely had, my father was born in 1936, they would have barely had cars. They were transitioning from horses to cars. They were transitioning from candles to more established lighting. Certainly they were getting the radio and then 45 records on the record player and so forth. So, and then TV, all of that was during my father's generation. Then with us, we were black and white TV that transitioned to color TV and so forth. So you see that there's lots of opportunities for our kids and our grandkids to hear about how we coped and sort of wow and amuse them in many ways about time in the old days. So it's just important. That's how family traditions are solidified. That's how caring about our older folks as they get older. If you haven't built in that opportunity to learn and care and love for our grandparents and our aunts and our uncles when they get sick in their 80s and beyond, hopefully, having family members who care enough to come visit because that relationship was established. We're surprised with some families who they put their parents into an assisted living and then rarely visit them. Well, maybe those family threads were not knitted together strong enough. And so I would say to all of you, is that going on in your family? And are there some things that we can do together as family members to make sure that when we end up in an assisted living, if we do, that we'll at least have some company pretty regularly to come and visit us? So the multi-generational vacations are a sure way, especially if they're done regularly, and they don't have to necessarily be done every year, but even every other year, to where, and goodness gracious, with being able to use Zoom and FaceTime and so forth, there's no reason why we can't regularly connect with our extended family, no matter what their age is, and make sure that we still feel that family connection. So as always, we have a fast now 30 minutes. And just to give some prep, JP of JP, Kathy, and the Crew will be joining me on a new show, Staying Sane, helping the world stay sane through health and awareness. Health and wellness is coming up in the next week or so. And so we hope that you will look forward to seeing that as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for being on. And I hope that your summer has been restful, that I know some school districts are back already as far as staff is concerned. I hope you went back a little bit more energized than you did the previous summer. And if you didn't, make time for yourself. Make sure that you use your time at home by getting in touch with nature, meditating, eating well, and watching our show. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.